Hey everyone, my name's Andy and I lead Restored Church Uptown here in San Diego. No big deal, but we were the first Restored Church. And we're doing a series on our values, and we have a couple different values as a family of churches. And really, these values could all be summed up in terms of our relation to love. There's this idea of the gospel, this idea of receiving God's love. We don't achieve God's love, but we receive God's love by faith in the gospel through what Jesus did. And in what Jesus did, at least to our second value, which is family. So as we've been loved, even though we don't deserve it, we begin to call together those who have also received that love. And we begin to love one another as brother and sister, as many are brought home as sons and daughters to the Father through Jesus. And loving each other as we love each other radically, different people with different political affiliations, people with different ethnicities, people of different socioeconomic classes, people with different backgrounds and ages and spaces and seasons of life. When the world sees us radically, sacrificially loving people who are different than us, they go, whoa. And that's mission, is as we display our love, the world goes, that's a different kind of love. It's countercultural, it's supernatural. But loving one another well and loving God well is hard because we're fundamentally selfish and sinful by nature. And so that's where our fourth value, dependence, comes in, which is God's empowering love. The Holy Spirit empowers us to receive God's love by faith in the gospel, to love one another like family, to love the world on mission. And then what happens is there's this idea of renewal. And so as we do all of those things, renewal is asking, what would it look like if God's kingdom were to come into this situation? Or another way to put it, what would it look like to bring God's love and power into situations, which is the idea of the value of renewal, where we restore things. What would it look like in this situation if God's love flooded a family that's about to break up via divorce? Or what would God's love look like if it entered into issues of racial reconciliation or poverty or sexual brokenness or whatever it is in our culture, what would it look like if God's love came in and renewed that thing? And so that's it. So as we receive his love, we give each other that love, we give the world that love, and as we do that, love floods the world around us by the power of the Spirit, which leads to a sixth value, which is the value of multiplication, where we go, we love that. We received love, we gave love, and then we did it again. And so what we want to do is we want to continue to give that love away. Again, one of our values is family. And in families exist, biological families exist to create a space for physical children to be raised up to physical maturity. Ideally, a family with a healthy set of parents who love their kids really well and teach their kids to love and affirm their kids and nurture their kids. And the goal was that they could one day go and start their own families or go do the thing that God called them to do in this world. And so that's what physical families are about. If the church is a spiritual family, it's the same thing. We are a family, not a business, which means we're not about adding a consumer, a bunch of consumers. We're not about adding a crowd. We're about raising up sons and daughters in light of the Father's love for us. So multiplication is all about instilling a gospel identity into men and women and challenging them into their calling. And so we want to multiply what we do. We don't want to, one guy, Jeff Vanderstel, he said that the church often functions like an orphanage, not like a family. He said in an orphanage, there is just a bunch of kids, and oftentimes there's not enough parents for the kids or healthy, loving adults for the kids to relate to. And so in the church, what we want to do is raise up sons and daughters to be parents in their own right. We want to raise up men and women. So we want to multiply everything that we do. When we have gospel-centered care and counseling, we want to multiply gospel-centered pastoral care counselors. Where we have gospel-centered preaching, we want to raise up gospel-centered preachers, and we want to raise up church planners and worship leaders and gospel community leaders and people that can impact the world in terms of renewal. People who can start nonprofits, people who can take the gospel into their workspaces. Again, if Jesus' love was represented at this public school where I'm a teacher, or if Jesus' love flowed into the office I work at, Monday to Friday, or into my family, into my home, what would it look like? And so we want to multiply people who bring the love of Jesus into every situation. And we want to do that by multiplying disciples, people who are seeking to live in light of Jesus' love and give their life to Him in every area of their life. We want to multiply leaders who can help walk those disciples into wholeness. We want to multiply churches, which are groups of people who are seeking to live in light of the love of God and display that love and give that love away. And we want to multiply even families of churches. So we want to multiply everything God does in us and through us. And so that means that we give people opportunities to step into their callings. If church were a business, we would only put the best people forward who have a lot of practice. But if church is a family, then we give people opportunities to try things for the first time, to preach for the first time, to lead worship for the first time, to try an entrepreneurial endeavor with a heart full of love, and give people a chance to fail. In a family, when my kids are learning to speak, when my kids were learning to talk, when my daughter said her first words were "ada," or she was trying to say "dada" or "daddy," we all got so excited. Her brothers and sisters took their phones out, were taking pictures, and they were so excited because we were there. She was learning to say her first words, even though they weren't the best words anyone's ever heard. She couldn't even pronounce "daddy" the right way. And so as the church, we go, hey, even if this isn't the best sermon you've ever heard, or the best worship set you've ever heard, or the best attempt to start something new you've ever seen, it's an honor to be here as they're beginning to explore and step into their God-given calling. And so multiplication is what we're about. We're not about addition, just adding people to something. We're about partnering with the Father to raise up sons and daughters, to send them out to make disciples, to plant churches, and to love the world and bring renewal wherever they go as they depend on the power of the Holy Spirit. So that's the value of multiplication. Yeah, we love it, and we believe in it, and our heart is that in 10, 20, 30 years' time, there would be dozens, hundreds of churches and disciples and faithful lovers of Jesus in cities all over the world. Love you guys.